Hey there. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are always delighted to be able to spend a little bit of time with you here on the podcast each week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're tuning in right now and you have not had the opportunity to follow us over on Apple Podcasts or maybe on Spotify, I want to encourage you to do that right now. And if you have a moment to leave like a star rating or even a few minutes to write out a review to us, we would really appreciate it. Just last week, we got a review that was titled Lifeline of Hope. And in this review, she says, our large blended family started out with so much hope, but hope has begun to dwindle as things have gotten a lot more challenging. She says, understatement of the year. Then she goes on to say, we're listening from episode 1 and we plan to listen every single episode. This has become a lifeline of hope for us. I just love the way that she says a lifeline of hope, because you know what? Hope is part of what we're all about. That's one of our real core values. Wouldn't you agree, hon?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's something that we had to find along the way. We had to look for those lifelines of hope over the years. And one of the things that became a lifeline of hope for us was learning about the stuck insider and stuck outsider dynamic, which we've come to call the trapped teammate and stranded stranger experience.
Yeah.
Now, we originally discovered this from step family expert Patricia Papernow in her book, Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big eye-opener for us. And the reason why I say that learning this became a lifeline of hope for us is because we suddenly realized that our struggles were normal.
Yeah, we're not totally abnormal. Maybe a little abnormal, but not totally.
We had a great sense of relief that there wasn't something wrong with us and that we weren't alone.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, learning about the stuck insider, outsider gave us some common language to use with each other to communicate when each of us was really struggling. And this is language we still sometimes need to use with each other.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, we also learned that there was something that we could do to ease the painful tension of being stuck on the inside as the trapped teammate, which is where most biological parents find themselves,
Right.
or being stuck on the outside as the stranded stranger, which is where most step-parents find themselves. We realized that we didn't have to stay stuck in our confusion and our frustration and our pain. We could actually work together to alleviate some of the tension that comes with that struggle and stay connected at the same time.
Absolutely. And this was such an important discovery for us. And the truth is, every blended family couple we've ever talked with or coached has experienced the trapped teammate, stranded stranger dynamic to some extent.
Yeah.
It's very common. And for most of us, it's also very painful.
That's right. So today in this episode, we actually want to throw you a bit of a lifeline of hope around this specific dynamic that's so common and so painful, because we all need to understand this and continue learning how to best manage the relational tension that's so prevalent for blended family couples in this. So we're actually replaying an episode that was released way back in February of 2020, so over 2 years ago. And it had a really simple title. We just called it, What is the Stranded Stranger and Trapped Teammate Experience? A lot of us don't have language for it. And if you've already listened to this episode, we want to encourage you to stick around today for some review. Plus, at the end of the replay, we're going to share our biggest aha moment about the trapped teammate, stranded stranger dynamic and how just a couple of weeks ago, we had to navigate this dynamic during a family vacation that we just returned from as well.
That's right. You don't want to miss that. And, you know, we've been blending for over 21 years, and we still have to navigate this stuff.
That's right.
So even if you've heard this episode before, hearing it again might just open up some new thoughts or ideas around how the trapped teammate, stranded stranger dynamic could be impacting you and your relationship.
That's right. So without further ado, here's one of our most impactful episodes, number 21. What is the stranded stranger and trapped teammate experience? Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your step family from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of step-family life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
So there we were, stuck in total silence in this 6-hour car ride, coming back from a vacation, locked in battle. Like it wasn't just us that was quiet. Even the kids were quiet because they knew we were locked in battle. There was a lot of tension. Yeah.
And we had hit a breaking point at that time in our marriage, and the dynamics really got the best of us.
That's right.
It was painful.
It really was. So back up a week or so, we were actually doing pretty good.
Seemed.
We were excited about planning this vacation for our family
to the Oregon coast.
Yep. One of our favorite places. Yep. Love the Oregon coast. And it's drivable, which on the way back didn't feel that great, but like we just said. But we were doing well. And we were actually working as a team pretty well, because we knew that with Annika in her early teens, she would probably pose some challenges during this vacation.
Yep.
And specifically, I remember we were trying to say, well, she's got her nose buried in that cell phone, which we talked about last week, I think, the same thing. But we knew that and we wanted her to, we wanted her to be engaged with the family. And so we were talking about, I remember actually we were on the front porch cleaning up or doing something, and we were talking about, well, what kind of boundaries are we going to put around the cell phone while we're on this vacation?
Yeah, because we really wanted to enjoy her and interact and have some family time together without her being glued to her phone 24/7, which seemed to be the case.
Yeah.
And so we did. We came together. We agreed that there needed to be some boundaries around this trip regarding the cell phone use. We agreed what the boundaries would be.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty easily.
And they were pretty balanced. That, we wanted her to have time on her phone. It's not like we were saying,
no
stick
phone,
in the glove box.
And I was being the bio parent, I was the one to communicate the boundaries to her, which I did. And that actually went okay.
Yeah.
As far as teenagers go. I mean, she wasn't thrilled, but she accepted it.
Yeah. And I felt like I got to be part of the conversation. I think we both were able to clearly communicate what we hoped for. And we came to, like you said, a fairly easy agreement. We were united.
Yeah.
And so off we went. We loaded up and we headed out, and we were really expecting to have a great vacation.
Yeah. It felt like we were on the same team.
Yeah.
And so it felt good.
Definitely.
But then I started not to feel so good.
Well, that was an element. Yeah.
The day we were loading up, getting ready to go, I started to feel sick. And the scratchy throat, the congestion, and Annika was also complaining that she wasn't feeling very
she had a
well.
sore throat and stuff.
So that's not the way you want to start out a trip, but I figured, we'll just, grit it out and make the best of it and, bring some meds and we'll be fine. It'll be okay. So, I mean, it started out fine, but about halfway through that second day, especially, Annika and I were miserable. I mean, we were up all night coughing. We both had bad headaches. We didn't have any energy to go and have fun with the family. And of course, as teenagers will do, especially when they're not feeling well, she started complaining about being bored.
Yep.
I was bored too, because I didn't have any energy and we were just kind of there. Mike and the two younger kids were off having fun, and she started pulling out her phone and using her phone outside of the boundaries that we had originally set. Because she wasn't feeling well and I wasn't feeling well to enforce it. Honestly, I wasn't at the top of my game.
Yep.
And I kind of felt like, she's miserable, she's bored, so things have changed, and it's okay if we slide on this boundary.
Yep.
I really felt that I could make the call because I'm the mom. I was, I'm her mom. She's my daughter. I felt like I had every right to readjust the boundary based on these new circumstances.
Sure. And, it's funny because on the back end of this, looking back, like whatever it was, 10 years ago or something.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
I can listen to that now and go, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, right? But you know what? As I started to notice that our agreement was not being upheld, and I started seeing Annika's nose buried back in the phone, I started feeling like I had a feeling of abandonment. I felt like you abandoned the plan and I was left in the dust.
Yeah.
And I got really, really angry. And, I think a lot of parents listening to what you just shared would be like, yeah, that, as a bio parent, that makes a lot of sense. It's like, hey, everybody's sick. And what's the big deal if she's sitting on her cell phone? And honestly, it really had nothing for me as my anger started to grow. It really had nothing to do in my head and my heart about Annika being on her phone. It had everything to do with the agreement that we made and you deciding that you didn't need to follow through on that agreement. That was the story that was in my head. And I got angry. I got really angry. And I felt like I was stranded on the outside of this little quote unquote clique that you and Annika had going. That was kind of my vision, that you had your little thing going and nobody could bust into that. And I was stuck on the outside. And so, I was really, really angry.
Yeah. There was definitely a biological divide there.
For sure.
Annika and I went off, did our thing. You were off with our mutual kids.
Yep. Feeling
very angry. And it's interesting that you brought up the fact that looking back now, it seems like, oh, no big deal. You should have empathy for the situation.
Right.
But as one expert puts it, we've heard this, pain trumps empathy.
That's right. I was in pain. Yeah. I didn't want to empathize with you.
No. When that pain hits, all empathy seems to just go out the door.
That's right. And I got angry and mad, and that caused you really to kind of go into avoidance mode.
Yeah. I didn't want to deal with you. Yeah. Because I could tell you were on edge. There was tension between us. And I just kind of felt like, well, this was my right to make this decision and he'll just have to learn to live with it, which wasn't very empathetic
not very
either.
Partnering, yeah.
No, I mean, we both were feeling pain.
Yeah.
And we both did not handle it well.
Yeah. And for a little while, like a day or so, it was more of a Cold War. It was kind of the silent treatment and all that.
The standoff.
But then there was a point where I blew my top and I was like, forget it. We're done. And about 2 days before we were supposed to leave, I just started throwing stuff in the car. Yeah. I remember the kids were like, what is going on? Like, especially our younger mutual kids were like, they couldn't figure out what was up.
You were literally...
But I was trapped in my own negative thinking. And I was just really angry.
Yeah, you'd had enough.
Yeah, so we packed up 2 days before we were supposed to, threw everything in the car, like literally threw it in the car. I don't even think we packed. We just threw it all in. Yeah. And we all ended up back in the car. And that's when we were just stuck in that van for 6 hours.
Of silence and just seething and anger.
Yeah. And that led to, another 3 days of the silent treatment when we got home. I don't think we slept in the same bed together. Yeah. We were really, really opposed.
Yeah. This was one of the most difficult seasons of our marriage.
Now, this was only one incident. And at the heart of this one fight was something that we call being the trapped teammate and the stranded stranger experience. And really, this was probably our biggest fight that we've ever had.
I think so.
But since then, we've actually discovered about this dynamic. We didn't know about this dynamic then. And we've seen how it plays out in all kinds of different ways, right? The big ways, the small ways. And really, from the beginning of our relationship, it's one that we've experienced over and over. And we were just talking, yesterday about how sometimes we still experience it. It's still
just a month ago, we had an experience where we experienced it.
Yeah. And not only have we seen that be true in our relationship, but every couple we've ever worked with has identified feeling this way to one degree or another. Some of them, it's minor.
Yes.
But some of them, it's even more major than what we've experienced.
Yeah, it's extremely common, and we should actually be expecting to experience this dynamic.
Yep.
And like Mike said, it can happen in just every single day and little things over and over and over. And then it can happen in a great, big, huge blowout.
For sure.
I mean, this was definitely a moment for us where this dynamic was strong, magnified, huge, in our face, and tied to other things like parenting decisions, which are touchy anyway.
That's right. So we want to spend some time today just talking about this trapped teammate, stranded stranger experience and helping you understand it, maybe identify where it's creeping into your relationship. And we're just going to give a couple of mindset thoughts around how to start approaching it. And remember, this is only one of a 3-part series. So after today, next week and the week after, you're going to get some practical things as well of how do we
strategies.
Yeah. How do we begin to reduce the tension that's around this whole trapped teammate, stranded stranger thing?
We want you to be aware of it.
Yep.
But we also want to help you to minimize it as much as possible. So that's our goal over these 3 next
3 weeks.
Episodes.
Yep. For sure. To really, truly understand this trapped teammate, stranded stranger experience, we've got to start with something that one expert named Ron Deal calls the reordered relationships. So you need to understand this for a second. In a first family, you've got a couple who comes together and they have a certain amount of time to build their relationship, and they build this foundational relationship for the family. They then together decide that they're going to have kids as a couple. So the couple relationship has come before that parent-child relationship.
Yeah, there's a bond already established.
Right. What happens for blended families is that actually gets reversed. The most long-standing and strongest relationship in the home is actually the parent-child relationship. And the couple relationship gets tacked on to the end. And sometimes it just it feels like it's not nearly as much of a priority. And it can really wreak havoc in our relationship.
It can feel like the secondary bond in the home.
That's right.
Which it is.
Which it is, yeah. And we have to work over time to slowly right that ship and get the couple relationship back as the foundation of the home. But we've got all kinds of things pulling on us that separate us, that create a wedge between us. And one of the dynamics there that actually kind of creates that wedge is this trapped teammate, stranded stranger experience.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what exactly this is.
Yeah.
Another expert in step families,
Patricia Papernow
says that step family structure puts parents and step parents on opposite sides of an experiential divide. We've experienced that again in big things and in small things. And when we end up on those opposite sides, that's when a bio parent becomes a trapped teammate and a step parent becomes a stranded stranger. And Papernow says that this happens every single time a child enters the room or a conversation. So it can be
that's a lot of times.
Emotion. Yeah, it can be in heightened emotion or it can be in simple things, but it creates this dynamic that can put a wedge between us.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the trapped teammate. What if you could experience a community that's all about healthy support, guidance, and practical strategies that help you thrive in your blended family? Well, now you can. Blending Together is a supportive community for blended family couples just like you.
We've educated and supported hundreds of couples navigating the unique challenges of blending a family. Now we're inviting you to join our community and experience the transformation that awaits you. But you'll need to act fast because we're getting started soon. Blending Together is not just another community. It's a place where you'll find practical, real-life strategies for building unity as a couple.
And creating more connection as a family.
Experiencing partnership in parenting.
And even dealing with that difficult ex.
Blending Together is a safe, growth-focused space where you get to connect with us and, maybe more importantly, with other blended family couples who truly understand what you're going through. Along the way, you'll discover practical tools, guidance, and hope that empower you to find a future full of confidence and connection.
When you join Blending Together, you'll get to hop into a variety of resources like access to our private Facebook group and online learning platform, monthly coaching meetings, monthly Q&As, and you'll even get to vote on the content for our monthly workshops.
Blending a family can often leave couples feeling alone or isolated and stuck. And quality support can sometimes be expensive. That's why we're offering you access to all of this at a super low monthly rate, because every blended family deserves the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their budget.
That's right. So join us in the Blending Together community and unlock the secrets to successful blending. Together, we can create a future filled with hope, connection, and peace. But don't wait. Click the link in the show notes now. The doors will be closing on October 8th, and you don't want to miss out on this unique opportunity to create the future you really want alongside other couples who genuinely get it. Hey, we can't wait to meet you there.
The trap teammate is kind of where the bio parent gets stuck. So for me, I was stuck in between Mike and Annika. And in that moment, the camping story moment, Mike was really upset. He was mad. And he also really believed that Annika needed to be held accountable to our original plan, to the agreement we had made. Even though we were sick, he really felt strongly about that. But I was trapped in between doing what I knew Mike expected and wanted me to do and taking care of my daughter because she truly was sick and in pain and bored. And the phone was actually a comfort to her and helped her get through the trip. So it felt as if I did the right thing by Mike, I was failing Annika. And if I did the right thing by Annika, I was failing Mike.
So either way, you lose.
Yeah. So the trap teammate often feels like they just can't make anyone happy. No matter what they do, no matter what decision they make, someone's going to be upset with them. Someone's going to be disappointed. And the reason why we call it the trap teammate, because they really want to be a team.
Yeah, totally.
They just want everyone to be happy and to get along, and they want to be able to care for everyone. But they often feel like they're kind of in the middle of this tug of war between their kids and their partner. And it's very difficult. And that's really how I felt on our disastrous vacation. The communication between Mike and I had shut down, and we really found ourselves unintentionally stuck in opposing camps. So those biological camps. And it's not where I wanted to be. But that's where we ended up. And I did feel very trapped. It was very uncomfortable for me emotionally.
It's interesting because it's almost like opposite ends of two extremes, but it's really hard to see what's in the middle.
Yeah.
How to find that middle ground, right?
There doesn't feel like there is a middle ground.
Yeah, sure.
It feels like you either have to side with one or the other to make someone happy. Knowing that someone else is going to be really unhappy.
So what you're really doing is choosing who you're going to make miserable. At least that's what it feels like.
In a sense, because there are many, many times when you and Annika wanted different things or believed that things should operate differently.
Right. That's totally right.
And I have that bond with Annika, that blood bond from her birth that was strong. And we went through those years together when I was a single mom, and we had that strong connection. Whereas with you, I wanted you to feel like you were part of the family and you played a significant role, but I didn't have that same connection. It's different.
Right. Yeah. And that's really, really common. Yeah. Right.
Talk about the stranded stranger.
Yeah. Let's talk about the stranded. So this is the opposite side. This is usually a step parent, right? And from my perspective, when we were in that battle on our trip, I wanted to be part of the decision process. Yes, you're right. I did want to uphold the boundaries, but I think I would have been willing to say, hey, can we just reconnect about these boundaries and decide, now that the circumstances have changed, what should we do? Right. But what I was looking for was partnership. Right. I was looking to be included and to be part of it, but I felt stranded. I was a stranded stranger on the outside because you just unilaterally made the decision and was like, this is, And you didn't even, I mean, it wasn't even a discussion.
Yeah.
It was just an action that was taken.
Yeah. So from your perspective, I had abandoned the plan
Yes.
that we made together.
And in my, for a whole load of reasons inside of me, it meant you abandoned me.
Yeah.
Not just the plan, but you abandoned me. Step parents often can feel like a third wheel when that biological divide happens that you were talking about. We realize a lot of times how close our spouse is to their kids. And often I kind of feel like an outsider looking in. And I can get frustrated with that because I'm just not quite able to connect with you or with Annika in the same way that you're connected with each other. And I want to be included. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And that's really being a stranded stranger. It's funny. I was thinking about this yesterday. I'll date myself a little bit here, but remember that movie Ghost, like with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore? Is it Demi or Demi?
I don't know.
Demi, if you ever listen to this podcast, let us know.
And whatever happened to her?
I don't know, whatever.
I gotta Google that.
But what was funny is so Patrick Swayze's character dies. Hey, spoiler alert. If you've never seen this, I'm going to totally spoil it, but it's like 40 years old. So
if you haven't seen it, you probably aren't going
But Patrick Swayze dies. He wakes up as a ghost and he kind of is starting to realize that he's a ghost, but he's trying to connect with everybody else around him. He's yelling and screaming. He's trying to touch them and move things and all of that. And none of anything that he does works. He can't get through. He can't connect.
Outside.
He's still on the outside. And I don't know, for some reason that came to me yesterday. I was like, that's kind of what it feels like to be a stranded stranger. You're waving your arms, you're screaming, you're saying, I'm right here. I'm right here. And the response is either negative or it just doesn't happen at all. And that's a really painful place to be.
And it's really due to those reordered relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, a parent and a child have their groove. They have their thing. Annika and I had our stuff that we did on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And you had never been included in it all those years that we were developing all of our little things.
Totally.
And then here you are, and it's like, wow, this is awkward. How do we bring him into this? Or how do we work
or there's
this?
not even a thought of bringing into
we're
it
just
because
do
you're
our
just
thing.
doing your normal
Yeah.
thing. It's not abnormal to you. Yeah. And that's great to share, because it's not just these giant blow up arguments like we had on this vacation. We've experienced this in a multitude of ways across the whole span of almost 20 years of being married. And it's like you said, it still pops up, and little things like, I remember, your bedtime routine with Annika, like that was a normal thing for you. And it didn't feel right to be invading that. And so I never really did, but yet I was out by myself feeling like, well, that's kind of a bummer. I'd kind of like to be a part of that. And it wasn't a major deal, but it just was
it gives you an icky feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the funny thing, we talked about this yesterday, how when you're in that dating stage, and you see all these cute things that a parent is doing with their kids. Oh, that's so sweet. They read stories together. Oh, that's so sweet. They do tea parties out on the deck together. Oh, look at that. Oh, they have their own little hand signs that they give each other. How it's so cute. But once you're a family,
once you're in it, you're under one roof.
Once you're under one roof and you're the one sitting there on the outside as all of these interactions are taking place, it's a completely different feeling for that stranded stranger.
Totally.
It's really hard.
And the same thing with the trapped teammate. I mean, as simple as, oh man, I want to go get some ice cream tonight. Oh, I want frozen yogurt. Like there's a tiny difference between ice cream and frozen yogurt, right? But if I'm asking for ice cream and Annika's asking for frozen yogurt,
what am I going to choose?
Who
do I choose?
Because that simple, tiny decision, actually, when Kim makes that decision, she's saying, I choose Mike or I choose Annika.
It's a statement of loyalty and priority. Every little decision like that speaks volumes to everyone else in the family. This stuff is pretty significant.
That's right. So, when it comes to all this, it's challenging. And chances are, if you're still listening, you identify with some of this. And again, every couple we've talked to in one way or another has felt either that trapped teammate or the stranded stranger.
Very common.
One thing that can be really challenging is when you live in a complex blended family. That means both of you have brought kids into the relationship, and you're vacillating between these two roles over and over and
You're
over.
Experiencing both.
Yeah. And we would think that it'd be easy to empathize with each other. But Kim quoted Paper Now earlier that, pain easily trumps empathy.
Yeah.
So when we're feeling stranded or trapped, we're in pain. And even though we kind of get it,
because we've been on the other side as well.
Yeah.
It still don't
it
have
doesn't just
empathy.
resolve itself. And so we've got to identify, especially in a complex blended family, what am I feeling right now? And am I feeling stranded or am I feeling trapped? Am I stuck on the outside or am I stuck between my kids and my partner? Just having that language and realizing it can really help.
Having the language,
That's right.
It can really alleviate a lot of it.
Totally. So for the rest of our time today, let's talk about a couple of major derails that we see when it comes to this whole trapped and stranded thing. And then we'll talk about a couple of ways to get back on track. And that'll be enough for today. And then we'll jump into some more things in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. And these are common derails. We've seen this a lot in the couples we've coached, and we live through these as well.
Yeah. The first one is about stranded strangers. The biggest derail that I've seen in my own response and as we help other couples is when I'm feeling like a stranded stranger, my reaction is to try to pressure my way into the circle.
So this is a step parent
right,
interjecting themselves.
Yes. So while we were on that trip, I was really, the first day when I was angry, I was acting very passive aggressively. 1 minute I would be either really standoffish and quiet. The next minute I'd try to pretend everything was okay. And the next minute I'd just blow up and get really mad.
Yeah.
But with any of those three reactions, what I was really trying to do was demand my way without really voicing my concerns.
Yeah.
I wanted to influence, or I should say manipulate, Kim into doing what I wanted her to do, which in a lot of ways was choose me.
Or shall we say control?
Yeah, maybe I've done a little bit of controlling over my
not
time.
you.
But I was trying to communicate my observations in a very unhealthy way.
Yeah.
And I was not really trying to understand what was going on for Kim. I felt abandoned. I felt stranded. So I just tried to figure out how to push my way into the situation so that Kim would do what I wanted her to do.
Yeah. And again, this is a trap we've seen, prior to marriage. We've heard clients say things like, "Oh, I loved how they interacted with their kids, and it was so cool how they spent all this time with their kids. That was something that attracted me to them, was how dedicated they were to their kids." But then as soon as they become a family, now this new step parent is jealous of the time that a bio parent is spending with their kids and wants to, again, force their way in.
Yeah.
I have to be a part of everything you do with your kids now because we're married.
Right. Yeah. And we try to force our way in lots of different ways. Sometimes in negative ways. Sometimes it's about, I want to be a teammate with you. Other times it's, I'm trying to push my way in a positive thing, like the example you just gave. Wow, that's really cool that you get that one-on-one time to play baseball with your son. Now I want to come do that too.
I don't want to be left behind.
Right. And so we try to push our way into that rather than honoring that tradition that they have and whatnot.
Yes, it goes completely against the crockpot strategy.
Yeah.
If you don't know about the crockpot,
keep listening. You'll hear more about it.
Search it on our blogs.
That's right.
Learn about it. But it definitely puts too much pressure and forces bonds to happen when they're not ready to happen. So when the stranded stranger is feeling like they're forcing their way in, that's a big derail.
Yeah. So how about for the trapped teammate? What's a big derail there?
So a major derail for the trapped teammate, and I definitely fell into this trap, honey, is when they really don't invite their partner's opinion in. They try to block their partner.
I felt stiff-armed quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah, so this was kind of in that place where I felt I had the right to make decisions about my daughter, and I didn't need to consult you, and I didn't need to talk to you about any changes to the plan. This is my right.
Yeah, and you kind of didn't want to talk to me. Right?
No, but that is a major derail, because had I gone to you and just respectfully said, listen, we need to talk about our agreement around the boundaries we made with the cell phone. I'm thinking it's not going to happen. She's feeling horrible. I'm feeling horrible. I can't enforce it. And just really invited your input in rather than blocking you out of the equation. And there were a lot of times I did this. I remember around parenting, I was just like, butt out.
Right.
But the truth is that you have that outsider perspective that can be very valuable.
Sure.
And helpful if the bio parent is willing to listen. And if you want to grow to truly become a solid, united team around everything in your household and really get on the same page, you cannot block.
Right.
You can't block the step parent out of the equation.
Yeah.
And you can't shut your partner out. That's a major derail.
That is a major derail. And one thing that kind of sticks out to me that's interesting too is we hear from couples a lot of times when they're so frustrated with parenting, they get to that point where they say, I'm just going to parent my kids and you parent your kids and we'll figure that out. Now, we have lots of things to say about that. But what the point here is, when we take that approach, we're actually feeding the stranded stranger trapped teammate experience, because we're keeping each other on the outside of dealing with our own kids. And we're digging even deeper into that trap of being stuck between our partner and our kids.
Yeah, the biological the divide there is growing and growing when you take that approach.
That's right. It just gets bigger and bigger. So if you've ever had that thought, I want to challenge you to think back through that right now based on what you've learned so far today. So those are two big derails: the stranded stranger trying to push their way in, and the trapped teammate actually stiff arming their partner and kind of keeping them out, whether that's intentional or unintentional.
Yeah.
So how do we start getting back on track? And this is really a couple of mindset things. We're going to talk more practicality in the coming couple of weeks, but we've got to think about this from what psychology would say externalizing the problem.
Yeah.
We've got to realize that the enemy here is the dynamic, not the person.
Yep, that reordered relationship, the dynamic you've entered into sets you up to fall as being a trapped teammate or a stranded stranger.
That's right. And again, I want to remind you as you're listening to this, I want to give you hope because you're not alone. Like we said earlier, every single couple we've ever worked with has identified with this. We have not had a single one yet say, nah, that doesn't make any sense to me. So if it doesn't make sense to you because you guys are lockstep, I would love to talk to you.
Yeah, a lot of times this is the dynamic that bring people to us for coaching because they just don't understand it and they can't move beyond it, and it's causing a ton of pain in their family. And the thing we have to understand is that it's not the people in our step family that are causing this pain.
Yeah.
I mean, I could look and blame Mike. It's your fault that this is happening. He could look at me and look at Annika and blame us, but it's really no one's fault.
Right.
It's the dynamics.
That's right.
It's externalizing the problem and looking at it from a dynamic standpoint rather than pointing fingers and blaming others for our pain.
And that can bring a lot of hope, because what that means is we can actually work together as a team to battle the dynamic rather than trying to battle each other.
Yeah.
We don't have to see each other as the bad guy. We're going to work in unity to battle the dynamic.
Yeah.
So get your brain around that the enemy is the trapped and stranded experience. It's not my partner.
Yeah. And we can identify, yes, there is a biological divide here. It naturally happens. But how can we bring that divide together in a way that honors everyone and nurtures everyone? That's the goal.
Yeah.
And it does take time. It does take intentionality, but it's so doable when you know how to go about it. And we're going to help you.
That's right. That actually leads us to the second mindset shift. So we're externalizing the problem. We're realizing that it's the dynamic that we're going to start to battle together.
Not each other.
And not each other. And that leads us to the ability to begin empathizing.
Yeah.
Because when we can see that each other is either, hey, you're probably feeling trapped right now, or hey, you're probably feeling stranded right now. Being able to empathize in that moment when there's a little less pain, because it's not you're attacking me, but we're dealing with that dynamic again, that pesky dynamic.
Yeah.
Now we can start to have empathy for each other and really try to connect rather than keep that chasm growing.
And asking each other, what does it feel like to be a trapped teammate?
Yeah.
I wish I had asked you that early on.
Sure.
What does it feel like to feel abandoned in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
And, ask you about that. And you asked me about how it felt. And like we said, we still experience this.
Sure,
We just experienced this like at
in
Christmas
December.
time when we were waiting on Annika, and Mike wanted to just finish up and go because we'd been waiting, and I wanted to wait for her.
Yeah.
And I was definitely feeling trapped between her and the whole rest of the family. Everyone wanted different things.
Yeah. So here we are 20 years later, and we're still experiencing
I wish I had said, I'm feeling like a trapped teammate.
I know. Yeah. That would have been good.
Really
actually.
helpful.
and that's really good advice, even if you're in a complex blended family, because the one partner feeling trapped may not feel exactly the same as when the other partner feels trapped. And so trying to understand what's going on underneath all that for each other when we're in these different positions is a really good thing.
What circumstances trigger the feelings is good to know. Yeah.
That's right. Now we're excited on this one. So those are some mindset shifts. So if we're stranded stranger, we're going to start figuring out how we can not pressure our way in. If we're a trapped teammate, we're going to try not to be blocking or stiff arming our spouse. We want to learn ways to invite them in. And again, we're going to talk more practically in the episodes to come. And if we want to get our mind around this, we're going to externalize the problem, recognize it's the dynamic that's the enemy, and then that's going to lead to us having more empathy for each other. Okay. So that's one of our most impactful episodes from over 2 years ago. And if this is your first time hearing about the trapped teammate, stranded stranger experience, maybe you're experiencing a little renewed hope right now.
Right. And maybe even a bit of relief that these dynamics are common, you're not alone, and you don't have to stay stuck in the confusion, frustration, and pain. You really don't.
That's right. And if this is not totally new for you, maybe you've heard this before, we hope that this has brought some great reminders, maybe some new ideas, and of course, some value as you continue to navigate your own trapped teammate, stranded stranger journey.
That's right. And this episode is just the first in a 4-part series. And we're going to put some links in the show notes to episodes 22, 23, and 24 as well, where we explore some practical ways of easing the relational tension that often comes with this dynamic. There are lots of things you can try.
For sure. And all of those episodes are a couple of years old as well. But the experience of the trapped teammate, stranded stranger is still active for us and probably for you too.
Right. It's all relevant.
That's right. You want to go and learn everything you can to reduce the tension that comes with all this. You really don't have to stay stuck in it. Now, earlier we said we were going to share our biggest aha moment around all this. That moment came several years ago when we were actually studying to share about this on our blog. Yes, believe it or not, we actually wrote a blog for like 3 years before we ever launched the podcast, and nobody ever read it. But that's okay. It's still out there if you want to go to get a little nostalgia there. You can find it. Yeah. Now, I remember the moment. We were like in the kitchen. I think, honey, you were cleaning some dishes or something, and I read this little excerpt out loud to you. And it was from a book by expert Patricia Papernow.
Right. She's a leading stepfamily expert.
Now, she's talking about the stuck outsider, or what we call the stranded stranger. And she says, nobody likes being left out of an intimate relationship over and over again. However, a step-parent who was the outsider in his or her family of origin will find this experience much more painful than a step-parent who was the favored sibling. Step-parents who were abandoned, ignored, or left unprotected as children will find the outsider position especially painful, even agonizing.
Wow. Honey, I remember when we read this, probably 7 years ago?
Yeah, about
and
that.
we just looked at each other with big wide eyes like, really?
Yeah. When I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, I definitely fit the bill on this one, because feeling abandoned, that's actually one of my biggest emotional triggers, because I often felt unprotected and abandoned in my blended family experience as a kid when I was growing up. So I understand why, when I experience this stranded stranger dynamic, it's actually really intense for me. And that makes so much sense as to why this has been so hard for me personally over the years.
Right.
Yeah.
And Paper Now goes on to say this about the stuck insider, or what we call the trapped teammate. No sane person enjoys being unable to please all the people they care about. However, the stuck insider role may be much more evocative for a parent who, for instance, grew up feeling they could not measure up, or who were caught between their own warring parents.
Wow. Those previous family of origin wounds that Patricia's describing there in these two quotes, she actually refers to them as old bruises, right? Now, you and I sometimes call them triggers or tripwires.
Right.
But they're old wounds from the past that actually fuel reactivity in us in the present.
Right.
And honey, I believe that you can really relate to those bruises that she just described in the quote you read. And those things probably amplified the negative emotion when you were feeling like a trapped teammate. Is that right?
Absolutely, because I really struggled to be accepted in my family of origin, and I felt like I was never good enough. And so it's incredibly difficult for me to be in this position where I feel like I'm failing someone that I love, or that they're going to be disappointed in me.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny when I think about back on that experience and I think about these two quotes, I'm like, wow, like you and I happened to come together to create the exact perfect storm formula to amplify this whole stranded stranger trapped teammate. And I actually remember when we first started talking about it, we thought, well, is this just us? Because sure, Patricia writes about it in her book, but our dynamics are uniquely wired to be perfect to fit into this struggle.
Yeah.
So is anybody else going to be wired that way or have those experiences or any of that? And what we've discovered over the last 7 years of really actively supporting couples, we're like, oh, everybody experiences this.
So many people have had those bruises or wounds from the past that impact how they react in that moment of pain.
Yeah. So understanding this insight into how our past actually amplifies the struggle of the present, that was a huge aha moment for both of us.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, as you're listening, maybe you can relate and go, oh, shoot, yeah, I think that's me too, right?
Yeah.
There might be deeper issues that make this dynamic especially painful for you. And you know what? Patricia recommends that you pay attention to what's happening inside when you experience that pain of being stuck as the trapped teammate or stranded stranger. Then you've got to mindfully consider if there might be deeper wounds from your past that tend to trigger your negative feelings.
Yeah. And if that's the case for you, you might think about doing some healing work with a therapist. Just be sure to find someone who has specific training or experience with step-family dynamics. That's really important.
Yeah. And this is something that we've both done as individuals, is seeking that help.
Right.
So that we could understand our specific tripwires and start to heal from some of that past childhood trauma. And it's really worthy work.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the crazy thing is that we've been married, like I said, over 21 years now, and we still have moments where we deal with the trapped teammate, stranded stranger dynamic.
For sure.
Like recently, we got to take a family vacation together.
Yeah.
And we were really excited that my daughter Annika, who is now almost 27, was able to get some time off work and join us.
It was exciting.
Yeah. In fact, because of the age difference between Annika and our two mutual kids, it's actually been about 9 years since we've taken a family trip like that with everyone together.
Way too long.
Yeah. And so during the trip, guess what? I discovered yet another level of feeling like a trapped teammate.
It just doesn't end, does it?
Yeah. See, because Annika has been out of the house and on her own since she was 18, we've actually been living kind of more of a first family dynamic for the past 9 years with our two mutual kids, Phoebe and Jacob, still being at home, right, honey? But the family dynamics change when Annika is with us. And so as we prepared for this trip, we were kind of just, you know, wondering with each other how things might go with all of us sharing a really small hotel room together for 6 days.
Yeah, I wanted the sardine experience, so I found the smallest room I could find. Yeah.
And so this is definitely what we would categorize a high intensity activity over an extended period of time for our family.
For sure.
Yeah. So we had a little bit of apprehension, and we knew that there would be opportunities for each of us to experience the trapped teammate, stranded stranger pain points on this trip, right?
Yeah. And of course, like most kids, and honestly, adults for that matter, or maybe you could categorize me as just a big kid. I don't know. The reality is everyone wants what they want, right? When we're out hanging out, everybody has different opinions and different wants. And, none of our kids are all that shy about expressing what they want.
Right. They're real direct.
Yeah. So there were different preferences and opinions about how we would spend our time. And of course, things like, what are we going to eat for this meal? Boy, that tends to be a big challenge for our family.
It really
I don't know
does.
about everybody else. Yeah.
So we weren't really sure what to expect at this point in our family's journey. And I actually did find myself feeling like a trapped teammate several times. But what I discovered was that I wasn't feeling stuck between Annika and you, honey, like I had in the past.
Yep.
But it was more about feeling stuck between what Annika wanted and what Phoebe and Jacob wanted.
Isn't that interesting?
It was interesting.
Yeah,
So I sometimes felt like I had to choose between Annika and our mutual kids. So that was a bit stressful, and I think parents in first families experience that as well.
Sure, sometimes.
Yeah, but for the most part, I think you and I, honey, did a good job communicating before the trip, and then we also sat down with all of the kids to set some realistic expectations at the airport on our way out, and I think that really helped as well.
Yeah, and that was such a key, was us communicating beforehand and really having open communication and dialogue all the way through.
Yeah.
So I would say that because of all that communication and, of course, the growth we've done over 20 plus years, right?
That helps.
I think this was such a radically different experience from the old camping trip where we were throwing stuff in the car and it ended in a miserable mess.
Yeah, we were extremely stuck as the outsider and insider.
Absolutely. And I want people to have some hope from that, to go, okay, even if we have a rough time early on, things change over time. And that's a good thing. We're actually going to be talking about that in a couple of weeks. And, the trip wasn't perfect, but it was good. I think we all need to remember that good and perfect are two different things.
Absolutely.
We can really experience good even when things don't go perfect. But what was really interesting is I can actually relate to what you're saying about feeling like a trapped teammate.
Oh yeah?
And you know what? I've never actually really experienced being a trapped teammate before because I didn't have kids coming into the equation. So you've been kind of in that role for over a couple of decades. But I discovered that in our unique blended dynamics, I also felt trapped at times between what the kids all wanted. And I also wanted to make sure that you got what you wanted and needed too. So I really don't recall over our trip feeling like a stranded stranger where I was like on the outside. I was actually kind of on the in with everybody, even Annika, which was pretty cool. But then I learned a little bit about what it might have been like for you in your position as the trapped teammate for the past 20 plus years. And all I can say is, honey, I'm sorry for all the times I really forced you into that position over the years.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talk to couples about a lot, of how a step parent can be very mindful about not putting their spouse in that position of having to choose.
Yeah, I've had to learn that the hard way. But,
And the point is that regardless of where blended family couples are in the journey, we continue to discover that this dynamic doesn't just go away.
That's right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
It's something that can tend to emerge early in the journey and then stick around even into the later years. So what that means is that you'll want to learn everything you can about it and start working as a couple to take action steps that are going to minimize the tension and keep you connected. That's so important.
That's right. And a great next step might be just to go back and listen to the rest of the series, episodes 22, 23, and 24. Or maybe you'll click the link in the show notes to set up a free coaching call with us. We'd be happy to connect with you and explore how you can navigate all this in your unique personal blending journey.
Yes. And Be sure to join us in 2 weeks and listen in on a discussion we have with our friends Steve and Jan Matthews, who also support blended family couples.
Yep.
And they'll be sharing about how they experienced the trapped teammate, stranded stranger dynamics, even though the kids in their blended family were all adults when they got together. Another unique situation.
That's right.
So you don't want to miss that.
For sure. So you're saying even when the kids are adults, this stuff doesn't just go away.
No,
So you want to tune in a couple of
but
weeks.
But they too have learned how to handle it, manage it well, and reduce it.
That's right. But for now, we're just going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.